Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for attending. We'll be hearing from the Asian Pacific Development Center today for our webinar. And I just wanted to start us off with a few housekeeping items before we get going here. So I just want to let everybody know that you will be on mute for the duration of the presentation. Any questions that you all have throughout the webinar can be typed into that chat box and we'll respond promptly. If it's technical issues, I will respond to you directly. If it's more questions around the content, the presenters will kind of pick and choose when they address those questions, so they may wait till the end of the presentation to answer all the questions. The recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel within 48 hours after the webinar. And then there's also a brief survey at the end. And if you could please fill this out for us, as your feedback is very, very valuable to us. And to get us going, I would like to send out a poll and hear who is on the, or in the audience. So if you could all fill out this poll for me, we'll just get a good understanding of who's in attendance. I'm seeing some community-based advocates, some system-based advocates, 75% community-based and 20% system-based advocates, and that's really all the ones that are showing up. If you're something, if you come from a profession that isn't listed in the 5 options, you can feel free to type that into the chat box as well. So it looks like about 60% of the attendees have voted, so I'll give it just another second to allow others to answer. And I'm going to go ahead and close our poll. I'm going to share those with everyone. So here's the feedback that we got for who's in attendance. So now, without further ado, I would like to pass the presentation off to our presenters. Thank you all so much for presenting for us today. So I just got a phone call from our presenters, and we've got a little bit of technical difficulty. They're trying to get everything up and running. Had a little bit of a computer crash. Just give us a couple of seconds, and we'll get this going.
I think we got it. Can everyone see?
Yes, we can. It looks like you're all good to go. I'm going to pass it off to you all now.
Sorry about that. Yeah, you know, technology, you can never really rely on it. Hi, my name's Newman. I am the director of the Victim Assistance Department at the Asian Pacific Development Center. I have here 2 of my advocates, Pratima and Sarah Salazar. I'll let them introduce themselves just to give you guys a brief bio on who we are and why we've been here.
Hi. So my name is Sarah. I've been a victim advocate with Asian Pacific Development Center for almost 8 months now, I do believe. And I've been in victim advocacy for about 2.5 years. And I'm currently getting my master's in social work, and yeah, that's me.
Hi everyone, this is Pratima Sapkota. I'm one of the victim advocates at Asian Pacific Development Center as well, and I've been here since a month, and today I complete a month and a week. So I am trying to pursue my career in nursing, and I'm really glad to be here, and welcome.
I guess a brief background on me. This is Newman. Got my master's in criminal justice, and I've been in the victim advocacy field for, I guess, about 7-8 years now, and something I've actually studied, and now working with the Asian Pacific Development Center is definitely something that I knew was going to happen eventually, but it's right in line with what I was looking forward to when it comes to working with nonprofit and especially working with marginalized communities. So today we're going to be discussing about culture, community, creativity, and coordination of services. And we're not going to say that APDC, you're going to hear us refer to Asian Pacific Development Center as APDC as the prime example for this, but we do feel that we do have some good methodology as well as services that we think, I mean, talking with all you other advocates and organizations feel like we want to strive for. Essentially, we're working to help the same population, and it's the victimized population, the vulnerable population, as well as the marginalized population. So the best thing for us to all do is basically kind of work together, and sometimes it's good to kind of learn from each other. So let's get started. We have a quick video that we would like to have you watch. It's only about 2.5 minutes, and it's just to show you kind of a story about a few of the refugee clients that we've had at APDC and where they are now. The audio may be a bit choppy, so we're hoping that you can kind of hear it as well as see it. There is subtitle under, so you can read along if it doesn't work out, but it's going to be really brief. Let me get this started.
My name is Suba, and I was a refugee of Burma. The military bombed our village when I was 9 years old. My family was forced to live in the jungle. We left Burma with no home, no food, and no opportunities. I have 4 children as citizens of no country.
My name is Becky and I'm 14 years old. My family work as farmers in Burma. Though we work hard, the government doesn't recognize us as citizens. My father wanted a better life for me and my brothers, and I came here when I was 10 years old. I was scared and I didn't know what to expect.
After 15 years, I got permission to come to the United States. When I arrived, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't speak the language. I didn't know how to feed my family. I felt like I was on my own. I came to the Asian Pacific Development Center to learn English. After a few years, I got a job as a babysitter. I also found a community. I do advocacy work for new refugees from Burma. Every year we get more, and I don't want them feel alone like they did. I have made my own life here with the help of Asian Pacific Development Center. My children attend the school in all. This year I bought a house and got a milk assistance.
I've been in Asian Pacific Development Center Youth Leadership for 4 years. I attended school in Denver, and me and my 3 best friends go to Youth Leadership Academy. APDC gave us many opportunities to learn and have fun. School and all of my classes. I want to grow up and go to University of Colorado to become a doctor.
I belong to this community and to this country.
So we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. Just hang in there. Trying to get the screen going again.
Okay. So we are trying to figure it out, hopefully. Because we can, and I do believe, okay, yeah, so I'm not.
Hi, we are back online again, I hope. Again, technology makes me really nervous, but I'm glad we have it at some point in time. So I hope you did enjoy that 2.5-minute video, but that kind of briefly shows you sort of the community that we work with and kind of the obstacles and the difficulties they have to go through every day. Oftentimes I feel like a lot of our, I guess the rest of the world and even, you know, people living in the United States, they're not aware of these type of narrative and stories. So some of the objectives that we're going to go over today, we're going to obviously go over cultural sensitivity, which I know probably everyone who's on this webinar have heard multiple times and have probably been hounded on regarding that, I guess, that aspect, but it doesn't hurt to kind of get a refresher. We'll talk about community-based outreach, what that really looks like for community-based advocacy, and what, I guess, what that word really means, community-based. Inclusivity, and again, just seeing the definition of it and how that applies to each of our services. Coordination of services, which I think is very important when it comes to the work that we do in helping victims, because we all know we want to do what we can, but oftentimes you're only given so much. And so the coordination of services is very important. And the main thing is to make sure that we're not kind of, you know, dropping anyone within the cracks or leaving anyone behind. And what accessibility really looks like to your community, to your population, and to the clients that you are trying to help with. So we wanted to put up our locations just so that everyone's aware. We have a main office location on Alton Street, and it's Alton and Colfax. The next biggest street would be Yosemite and Colfax, and that's where APDC is located, along with all of our other services and the other departments. We're all there. And because we have over 50 people in that building, we're kind of bursting at the seams. Our department has a satellite office at the Rose Anden Center. So we are also at the room. Are we? We are in the 3rd floor. And so we also will do direct services here too for our victims. So we are in room 339. I just found that out. And those are office hours, as well as, you know, we take appointments too. All right, so our mission at the Asian Pacific Development Center, specifically on here, you see it as, you know, to advance the well-being of AAPI communities within Colorado. And because we are the only pan-Asian organization in the state, we do serve statewide, and especially with our department, we do have various funding from different jurisdiction. But with that being said, our department serves beyond just the AAPI community. We do specialize in the AAPI community because we have the availability with staff and with a lot of the cultural background from our staff members. But with our department, we serve anyone who, as long as they're a victim of crime within the state of Colorado. So cultural sensitivity. Go ahead, Sarah.
The one slide I didn't want. Okay, cultural sensitivity. So on this slide is a basic definition of what it means to be culturally sensitive. I know this is really a buzzword, especially in the field that we work in. For us, it's really realizing that being culturally sensitive is not something that you can ever reach. No one is ever going to truly be culturally sensitive. It's a growth process. It's constantly wanting to learn about the different cultures and the different communities that you work with.
And on top with that cultural sensitivity definition, what we know the definition, we know what it's supposed to look like, and we know how we should be, but oftentimes until we're put in that situation, we don't know how different we are. And Sarah can actually give you a few examples of when she realized, though she considered herself culturally sensitive and competent in a lot of aspects working in the field, she realized how disconnected she was with working with clients within the Asian community. Go ahead.
So yeah, that's definitely true as a white appearing person. I definitely had to learn a lot, and it was definitely curveball after curveball of learning with my clients, just the differences and the things that we never really think about. How much I use slang when I speak is one thing, or how my abruptiveness and kind of, I guess, what you'd say confidence in American culture can be seen as abrasive to other cultures, and it's not like I'm an obnoxious individual as far as American standards go, but for a lot of my clients, that it could be seen that way, and it was things that I never truly realized about myself until I was interacting with other communities and even with my staff members to figure out, like, oh, these are things that I do constantly that are highly Americanized.
And sometimes it does take a person to actually be entrenched in that community to see that. And because though she is, like she said, white appearing, and she's working with the Asian Pacific Development Center, which even within our own name and terminology, you would assume you must be Asian to get served here, or you must be Asian to work here. But that's not necessarily true. The only reason that came about was the background of our organization came about in 1980s when the influx of immigrants from the Southeast Asia kind of came to the U.S., and there was this gap in services, and this was after the fall of Saigon at the end of the Vietnam War. So it started out as a behavioral health necessity for these immigrants and refugees, which created the Asian Pacific Development Center. But from then, we've developed beyond that. And with our organization, a lot of it is seeing what the needs are currently with the community versus with what, may have been then. And with the current political background and the current political climate, we know that the services that we are serving our clients now has changed significantly from 5 years ago. So more on that cultural sensitivity side. So when you hear AAPI, the Asian American Pacific Islander, that is such a big demographic, because we have people from Southeast Asia, mainland Asia, and then we have other people who are Pacific Islanders who all their cultures are completely different. So knowing that you should act one way towards one Asian culture does not mean it applies to all. And it can be very complicated to differentiate that. And for us, we found that a best practice is honestly asking and talking to our client and victims about where their comfortability is, or their approach and how they want services from us, rather than having that presumption. But with a lot of cultures, and not just only Asian culture, pride and shame is very, very it's a very important value to not dishonor the family. And this comes in with a lot of our victims who they don't want to be labeled as a victim, or they don't think of it as a crime that was committed against them, because there's this inherent sense of self-blame and the fact that they caused it to happen. And so then they would in some way dishonor the family from having this happen to them instead of, preventing it from occurring, which, as we know, that's not the case. And with that reluctance to ask for help or complain, because if you do that, the community is so small, it's really difficult to find someone who is not related or knows someone who knows someone else. And so they feel like, and that's true with any small community, rumors do begin. They start somewhere and they kind of compound on each other. And so that's something you want to avoid in general. And so that's a big thing within the Asian community. As you saw in the video, we had refugees from Burma. The Burmese community here is very, very small, and they're located in certain places. So if something happens to a person where they're seeking help and others see them seeking this help or services, there may be talks in the community about it. But that's why we're very excited to be located at the Rosandan Center, where we know that we're actually away from the main office, where we can have clients come in away from other people who may see them come in and out of the office seeking for services. So that's kind of a good thing that we're kind of looking forward to, and seeing how that would change the mentality of people stepping out and seeking for help. But to understand that shame and pride is a big obstacle for us to kind of, I would say, overcome and educate the community.
So the next bulletin point on there is fear and misconceptions about law enforcement. And I think it's important to understand that for the majority of the clients that we do serve, there isn't a great understanding of law enforcement's role or an understanding of the difference between police officers who are protecting our communities and ICE officials. So I feel like a lot of the mistrust that has to do with law enforcement can also be pulled back to corrupt governments in the countries that our clients come from. So these are all things that we have to take into account, and really breaking down our roles to our clients when we meet them. Normally when I meet a client, it's not just, oh, I'm explaining the legal process as if I was explaining it to someone else, like a friend of mine. It's, I'm breaking this down to bare bones of what all of this means, what every event will look like, breaking down the language, because a lot of the words that we traditionally use in the law enforcement and criminal justice fields don't actually interpret or translate as easily as we would all hope. Going off of that, deep commitment to family is extremely important. I know here in America we all value our family. We have, family commitments. We do Christmas and Thanksgiving and things like that together. But commitment to family in most Asian cultures is much deeper than that. There's more of an obligation to family, and like the slide does say, there are clearly defined roles in the unit, with elders being on the top of that. And when we talk about family units, it's not even just so, your brothers and your sisters, it's everyone. It's your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, everyone who is here with you is dependent on that family structure. And you really are, as a victim, obligated to your family. So I can just give you an example I've had in a previous case where I had a victim who was a victim of domestic violence, and it was a very bad case. And she wanted to get a divorce, but the elders in her community said no, and that meant no. And it wasn't something that she could argue or something she was willing to sacrifice, because if she went against the elders, that meant losing out on her entire community and really starting over alone.
And we know that with a lot of victims that we work with, loneliness and isolation is a big thing that they do fear because it's kind of like starting over. And when you are raised in a culture where all you have is community, where do you begin? Who can be there to support you? When we understand that aspect, we can kind of dig deeper and let them know there can be a support system that may not be their community, that could be, you know, the service providers, the advocates, and take that bigger role. And of course, this is very draining on all of us, but that is something we would have to sacrifice and dedicate our time to. And that's why a lot of our cases is very time intensive, because we have to take that extra step to guide them and give them that baby step so they can see that it's okay to be separate from the community and be a stronger individual. But it's a learning process, and education is very important. So that cultural sensitivity aspect is to really understand when us as providers are saying we are here to provide you these services, do we know the consequences that would come about if they do take one of the options? Do we know if there's a background, like what is the collateral damage essentially, and what is the essential backup plan if things didn't turn out right or you didn't plan for something to happen? So I feel like culture is a big thing to consider when it comes to marginalized population. And I feel like this is the same with rural communities too. Rural communities, just like a lot of the refugee and immigrant community, are very small, limited in resources, and are so separate from the mainstream. And advocates and providers who work in those rural location has a better understanding of that than, you know, the mainstream metropolitan advocates like we are. But and so it's to really take a deep look at that and what it really means.
And just jumping off of that also, I feel like individualism is a very Americanized idea. So if you realize that you're working with a client where the family is very important to them and the roles are clearly defined in that way, that you utilize that as well. Because if you're really trying to get something done and you communicate with the family in a way that is respectful to them, you can really get them to help you benefit this person in a much more constructive way, to where they feel as if they have the community backing them as well.
Good point, Sarah. And with that being said, it goes back to what I was saying, being patient and understanding that these vulnerable population is going to take much more time than, you know, anything else, solely in the fact that there's a lot of education, there's a lot of outreach, and really breaking down the terminology and for them to truly understand. And a lot of that understanding can come with repetition. We know that being advocates, that it takes us a while to realize how things work, how people react, and same with trying to get through an idea to a victim or a client, and it can vary. There are some clients who are wanting to really get out of the situation and to grow, while others, they kind of need that person to be there from A to Z, and we don't know what that looks like, and we have to be able to understand also the cultural background in which they come from and the upbringing for that. The next thing is that don't assume that they understand. For our culture, for the AAPI community, there's a lot of nodding. We nod a lot, and it's actually to show respect. And so when someone is talking to you or addressing you, you would nod and smile and nod. That's the best way to be polite. However, that does not mean what you just explained to them made sense. I would say the best thing to do when it comes to trying to gauge on if that person really understands is to kind of rephrase the question. Can you tell me what I just explained to you, or what do you think this, terminology is, or this process is going to look like for you? Having them kind of restate it or rephrase it in their words, then you can kind of help tailor it to see, you kind of got part of it correct, but this is the main point I'm trying to get through. And kind of having that repetitive conversation so that they understand. And for us, it's having that interpreter there. And we feel like language is kind of like the first barrier to break down before we can truly create that rapport with someone.
And to add some here for the assumption and nodding, most of the clients, we were talking about this the other day, and among 100%, you ask them, is everything clear? And they say yes. And if we say, okay, if you understand, let's go further, they're never gonna remember it the minute after you told them everything. So basically, it's like you tell everything, and among 100%, 99% will say yes. And if you have them repeat what you just said, among 100%, 75% they don't even remember. And some of them, they just remember few phrases, like just one word or 2 words per max. So being from coming from the Asian culture, even right now when the ladies were talking, I was nodding my head myself. So if you ask me, so what they did just say, I will be like, okay, it's just about cultural sensitivity. What do you want me to explain? So so paying attention to what their nonverbal behavior is like, and how they behave in whole session, it really matters. And they might not address their immediate needs ASAP, or they might not be feeling comfortable because they think that we're really trying to be straight and trying to be strict on what to have them follow on what to do next. So they might be scared, first thing, and the other thing, apart from scared, they might be hesitant to pour out everything what is in their heart.
And then on the opposite side of that, then there are some clients that tells you everything that's happening to them, and then you're trying to sort out this massive information dump on, okay, how can I help you? What services can I provide to you with everything you've given me? And again, that has to reflect on the culture that this person is from. Sometimes they're in a culture where they don't usually get to talk, where they don't usually get to discuss this issue. And now talking to someone who wants to listen to them, they may let it all out. And so just being able to gauge that and understand that aspect of it. And then, I'm sorry, as I was trying to get Sarah to explain her slang with you, as she had brought up, she has the tendency of talking in slang to even staff member, where she realized, oh, that's something they wouldn't understand because culturally that doesn't translate to where that person's from, or the idea of that colloquialism.
Okay, so just going off of that, just an example of that, when I was training Pratima on becoming a victim advocate and safety within an office, and we were talking about, how she should position herself closer to the door if she doesn't feel comfortable with a certain client so that she can exit the room. And I gave her an example of when a client had flirted with me inappropriately, but I in turn used the word he hit on me. And she had the understanding that he had physically assaulted me. And it took us until the end of the conversation for me to realize that Pratima thought that I was saying that he had physically assaulted me, because the look on her face, she was like, oh my God, I'm going to get abused at work and I can't handle this. So, and it is things like this where even I feel as if Pratima hadn't shown that on her face, and if I hadn't asked her, like, why do you look so scared, that she wouldn't have told me that we had a misunderstanding. So it's really about being aware of their cues and kind of reflecting on your own language as well as you go through that process.
And just keep in mind that with anyone who's seeking assistance, there's always a discomfort, whether you're, within a marginalized community or just within any, within the American culture, because seeking for help means there's some sort of problem. And I feel like, and sometimes a lot of people don't even know that there is services to help with certain things, and people are even surprised on how to even approach that assistance. So that discomfort is always there regardless. And so we kind of want to build a little bit on the nonprofit organization framework, on some pros and cons, and kind of what we get working at a nonprofit and seeing that there are going to be barriers when we are in this field. So with where we work at APDC, when it comes to a nonprofit organization like us, some pros, freedom of services. We can always change our services. We can, reduce it. We can expand it. We can do what we need to have our services fit the community that we are serving. And for us, it is specifically, though we specialize with AAPI, it's immigrant and refugee, and with my department specifically, any victims of crime. And just recently, we've expanded with doing direct services for human trafficking victims. This just means more education with our, not only our department, but the whole staff at APDC. Of course, being a nonprofit organization, there is confidentiality and privilege for us. There's some discretionary funds. So when I write my grants, kind of looking back and being able to see these are the clients that have came to see us. This is the needs that they need. This is what we need this year, because we foresee, more people needing bus voucher. Maybe with our new location, we realize we're having, our clients are traveling more, so maybe we have more money for bus vouchers instead versus where we were going. So a lot of that makes it easier for us to work for our community. And so then with that, a lot of our work kind of falls back into prevention work, can fall back into prevention work solely on the fact that we do the outreach in the community, and we want to make sure that there's enough education behind a lot of these concepts, a lot of these crimes that's happening. For instance, we just created a curriculum on healthy relationships for the ESL students within our agency, just kind of as a way of letting these students understand and know what a healthy relationship should look like. But when doing that, we also understand the cultural side of, we can go and have this training in English, but they may not understand it. So we have our training in their language. We had it in Burmese. We're going to have it in Nepali. Karen is going to be the next language, and being able to meet the clients or meet the community where they're at when it comes to that. And then when it comes to nonprofit organization, a lot of nonprofit, as you see in the picture, kind of sprout up because of great causes. A lot of things are happening, and people want to create a space or service to help what is missing in the community. But with that being said, there's always cons to it.
Yes, so any of us who work in nonprofit organizations know that there are some downfalls to the freedom that we have. One of the main ones, of course, being the lack of reliable funding, although there are lots of grants to apply for. That is a process that we have to do every time, and you're never certain how much money you will get approved for, if you get any money at all, which kind of makes everything kind of be up in the air around the same time every year for grant season. Also the lack of structure. So most nonprofits do sprout up because of a particular cause that they want to work for, which means that we are building from the ground up, which means that we have to implement all of these things and figure out how to do staff, and we're constantly reworking to figure out how to best provide services to the communities, and that's constantly a changing framework, because it's not as if we're in the criminal justice system and we have a certain goal, being prosecution or anything like that. We're constantly reevaluating our goals and reevaluating the services, which means that our structures and our policies are constantly changing. Something I've noticed a lot with case management is the limited information access. I previously did work in a government agency at the DA's office, and it was amazing how quickly and easily I could access information to provide to my clients, whereas now if I have a client who has a case, I have to call 4 different people to find out where their crime victims compensation application's at, what is their case number, who's the detective on their case, has it been seen by a DA, and this is all just information funneling that we're having to do, and that's if organizations know who we are and they're willing to call us back and feel comfortable talking to me, because if my client doesn't speak English and my client's there with me, I'm not sure if they'll disclose information over the phone, so then I have to get an interpreter and go through all of these different routes, which just makes it a lot more footwork on our end, which of course goes back to the freedom of services, but then with limited funds in certain ways, it's kind of a balancing act of figuring out what we can do and what we should prioritize. Okay, so community-based outreach. So I think the 2 most important questions which we have on here to start out with is who's your community and what bonds your community. So depending on where you're located, that might be your community, or you might be targeted towards a certain community, so that might be your community. But you really have to focus on who you're trying to serve, and of course the more broad that is, the more complex you kind of tailoring your services to them becomes, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible to do. I think the most important thing is that there's always some caveat to every community, whether that be, okay, you serve the elder community, so you can tailor your services to that particular type of community, or in our case, how we would like to be culturally inclusive, so we tailor all of our services to that particular standard.
And so to tie on with kind of the community and what bonds your community, you would have to meet your community where they are at. For our community within the refugee and immigrant community, we know a lot of them though we may have brochures and we may have flyers, many of them may not be exposed to that. So what would be the best way for them to know that we exist as an agency or even as a service provider is to actually go into the community, knowing when they have community meetings or when they have town halls within the refugee location, or if they are having, because with the location where we're at, it's right close to a lot of the refugee resettlement organization. If we know when they're having an orientation, to make ourselves be available to that community so that they know we are there. And I used the example of rural communities. If you know your rural communities have I don't know, farmers market, or one of those annual festival, whatnot, that may be where you want to expose your agency and your services so that they know that you exist, and taking the step out of just the office, because though we say that we're here and we exist, but community-based means you have to be part of the community, whether it's to be involved in an activity that's happening. Like recently for us at APDC, we were involved with the COVAX marathon. And it helps because we're located on COVAX, and trying to be involved in that way as an agency, that helps bond the community and you as a service provider together too. And a lot of that allows them to see that you're wanting to help out, that you're wanting to step beyond just the work that they see that you do in an office or building. And that creates, I would say, a closeness between, and it breaks down that barrier between a professional service provider and a member in the community that realize maybe I want to go to this person not really to seek services, but maybe to understand more about them and to understand what they can do for us. And for us, we want to reach the minority or the refugee community leaders, because they are the ones that are kind of leading these smaller communities, whether it's in temples, church, or mosque, that they understand that this community leader is supportive of what we do, so therefore the community should come to us. And to see that, whether it's religious, whether it's recreational, all that comes into play of how much as a service provider do you want to be part of the community that you are serving. And it can mean a variety of things, but those are just some brief examples. I also wanted to add, feel free to give us any questions. We are constantly checking to see if there's any questions, and we're more than happy to answer them as we're going through these PowerPoints, or we can answer them at the end, whatever the audience feel comfortable with. So when we talk about the topic of inclusivity, what does that really mean? When it comes to service provider, we say that we're inclusive. We want to help everyone, and we're here to help everybody, and everyone can come to us. But what does that really look like? And it will change. Like I had said, for us, though we say we specialize in AAPI communities, we have kind of broadened that terminology and that mission to refugee and immigrant communities solely on what's been happening right now. And to be inclusive, we can say, we're inclusive. We hire different people. That's inclusive within the staff, but what does that look like for your clients? Are you inclusive with your clients? And sometimes sometimes within the agency it's hard for us to realize if we are being inclusive, and it takes us kind of like a second look from the outside to see what that really means.
So in making this slide, I did go around and ask different people within our organization, and that it was including a lot of our clients of what made them feel like they were welcome at our agency and what we could have done better to make them feel like they were welcome and feel inclusive within our agency. So on the side that says ways to make your staff inclusive, so professional versus personable really means we all know that we're professionals. We're all here for a certain task. But when we put our titles before treating each other as if we're humans, as if we're equal, when meeting someone, that can really make a relationship or creating rapport with your client very hard, especially when you include certain cultures in that. So I think with that, we were really just trying to put off that when you first meet someone, to be personable with them. And of course, they know that you're a professional, and professional aspects of your communication will, of course, be established when you talk about boundaries, when you talk about confidentiality, when you talk about kind of what's going to happen going forward with whatever you're doing with them, whether that be case management or, helping them apply for a protection order, whatever that may be. But I think we have to, in sticking to the idea of being community-based and meeting people where they're at, focus on the idea that they are people first. And then I know that we all have priorities in what we do, but we kind of need to put the person first in that aspect. Recognizing personal ethnocentrism. So I think, and this is something that I do all the time at work and I'm constantly checking myself on, is I assume because I understand something or I've experienced something that everyone I speak to has that same understanding. And it's not like we do this because we're intending to be arrogant or because, you know, we think we know everything. It's most of the time it's just subconscious, but it's realizing these things in yourself and then wanting to explain and share parts of yourself with other people. I guess another example of that was I was using a coworker to help me translate something for a client, and my ringtone went on, and it was a song by the NWA, which is a rap group, and I just started having this conversation with him out of the blue about Tupac, and just assuming that he knew what I was talking about kind of put a bridge in between us, because he didn't feel comfortable enough to tell me that he didn't know what I was talking about, and I just assumed. So it took us all the way until the end of the conversation for me to realize he has no clue what I'm talking about. And of course, we're not going to be having, you know, rap artist conversations with our clients, but there are things like that that happen all the time, where whether that be with food or with traffic laws or different things like that, it's very easy to assume that our knowledge is transparent to everyone, and that's not always the case, which is where the prioritizing training comes in. I think I've learned so much from simply going to different trainings to learn about different cultures, and there are individualized trainings to learn about specific cultures. If you have a clientele that is tailored to a particular culture or a particular ethnicity or a particular religion, there are trainings out there so that you can kind of just have some knowledge, so you can show your clients that you're trying to respect them and respect where they're at, and going forward with creating rapport with them.
And as an example of a lot of this is we talk about, because we do serve such a wide variety of clients from different culture and different languages, we don't have all the languages staff in our agency, so we have to use interpreters. And I feel like understanding the etiquette when using interpreters really helps open up that inclusivity so that everyone's involved in the conversation. Because now you're having someone who has no idea what's going on. You're using a middle person to interpret the process or the legal definition in English, and then this other person is talking in another language where you may not understand. So we constantly have that gap. So understanding an etiquette and using interpreters, such as eye contact with the other person, letting them know that, yes, I have no idea what you guys are talking about, but I want to be involved, I want to be present, and I am here to help you if you have any questions in what I just said in English that's being translated. That even that small gesture of body language helps makes it so that the person is able to open up. And a lot of this stuff that we're talking about goes back to building that rapport. Rapport is so important for us to create with our clients and victims, because we want to fully address their needs, and it's really difficult to do that if they won't be open with us. I mean, we're always going to be here, but they have to be open with us so that we know where we can help them. And so understanding that we want to be inclusive by being attentive, by being constantly engaging, by wanting to learn more, shows that, okay, there's multiple cultures, not everyone's on the same page, so what makes me be that person that you can talk to me about that situation? And so again, it comes back to, what is your community? For our community, like I said, it's so diverse that there's lots of training that we have to constantly go to so that we understand. And even with training, it doesn't mean much if we don't apply it to our work and to actually take that knowledge and, you know, utilize that skill set when we are in the situation. And so the other thing is, when it comes to being inclusive for us, we try to have a diverse environment, not only within our staff, but with the space that we are at, where our office actually has a lot of language that reflects, you know, the different culture that we serve, the art. We have, I mean, just recently there was a flash mob that the Youth Leadership Academy did, and it was actually an Indian culture dance flash mob that they did around the metro area, and that was something that they did, you know, every day for the past few months from 5 to 6, just to practice that. And it exposed a lot of other staff members on, oh, this is what's happening, knowing more about this other culture that a lot of us may have not been aware about, but using something like flash mob that we know what it is in American culture. So that fusion can help sometimes, and it's a safe space for people to realize that they can be differences and it's appreciated. So from that, we want to talk about coordination of services.
So talking about the coordination of services, we do have the relationships between organizations that technically might imply not only the partnerships, but a relationship, how we work within different organizations. So for example, we at our at APDC, we have behavioral health, youth leadership, and primary care health service with MCPN and variety of services including victim assistance. We do reach out to other organizations where we build the relationship, where we can coordinate and provide as much as services required by our clients. And that is fulfilled having the hand-off meetings whenever applicable, and the meetings within the organizations. I would like to hand over this to Sarah.
Okay, so what we mean by handoff meetings is we understand that we're all busy, and like Newman mentioned earlier, we can't all provide all the services that we may like. But especially with marginalized communities or individuals or clients that you're serving that may have certain challenges, whether that be that they've experienced extreme trauma, so you need to take more care in referring them to other people, or whether that be that there is a language barrier or there is some sort of disability that makes it hard for them to go to multiple different locations to receive services. So for us, the handoff meeting means that, let's say that I had a client and I was going to refer them to Project Safeguard to get assistance filling out an application for a protection order. That means that I would communicate with the caseworker at Project Safeguard to figure out exactly what we need going on, set up appointments with them, then I'd speak directly to the client about the same thing. I would go with the client to the first meeting to kind of make sure that everything goes well, make sure that everyone's on the same page. And it also helps with us not re-victimizing the victim and the fact that of them having to tell things over again or feel like they're simply getting transferred out because we don't want to handle them. So that way it shows them that we do care, that we are trying to meet all of their needs, and it also builds a relationship between us and that other organization, because, you know, if I'm meeting with Project Safeguard's people every time I bring a client over there, then, well, we're going to end up having a relationship, and that makes our services stronger, because then we're going to know a little bit about each other and how we work and the type of services that we can provide, which works great. And that also falls into prepared transitions. As far as callback times, I know a lot of times organizations do have automated systems and there's nothing you can do about that. I personally don't think that those are the most accommodating things in the world, especially because most of our clients in particular have no idea what they say. and have no idea how to coordinate them because they are a very Americanized thing. And what I mean by personalized voicemails, I, as an individual, speak insanely fast, which is something I've learned about myself working with my clients. So on my voicemail, I really have to time myself to make sure that I'm speaking slow enough that for someone who has limited English proficiency, they could understand, at least slightly, what I'm saying, or at least to the point where they can try and write something down, because most of our clients do learn how to write English before they learn how to speak English, to show to someone else to kind of help them through that process. And a lot of this, of course, it does take more time, and it's all about accommodation, really. It's how well do we want to serve our communities, because if that is our goal, to provide services and provide them well and be proud and have our clients be able to, you know, tell their friends about us and be like, yes, they got back to me every time and they hit on everything that I needed to. See, I just did it. I just used the word hit. They provided all of the resources that I needed. They addressed all of my concerns. That means that we're going to have a better relationship with our community, and our community is going to have a better relationship with us, which is so important.
And the other thing with the coordination of services is because we're such a small, we ourselves as service provider for advocacy, we are such a small community ourselves that word of mouth gets passed around. So we understand, you know, that there are clients that may be saying how they were treated from one place to another, and we want to reassure them and have them know that, you know, they can always come back to us, that they will get the same, you know, the good service and the, I would say the good customer service that they did. And we want that because word of mouth is very important, especially within our community. And with the previous slide talking about how a lot of our nonprofit agency and services, a lot of people don't know we exist. So what's the best way besides marketing ourselves? The best way to get ourselves be known through word of mouth and through experience within the community itself. So it all kind of ties together. So we have an example here of our coordination of services within APDC. We have an integrated system of care model where a lot of what we do within APDC, we do through interagency referrals. And by doing that, why we do that, and we feel like it's a good example of coordination of services, because with the fact that we're located on the same location, a lot of time we create that rapport with the first touch, with whether it is through our department to a different one. From our department, we're able to maybe walk over to the other department, whether, let's say, they needed to get adult education, some ESL classes. We're able to help them go through that process of paperwork and have them even meet some of the teachers who may be there for them to see, okay, so this is what a teacher for ESL would be like, and this is how class is set up. And to build that and continue to build that trust and rapport with the clients, for them to know that within our own agency, they can seek multiple services besides just victim assistant. And again, that starts not only with that, you know, warm handoff, but to follow up. Sometimes we may see our client in the ESL class, would ask them, you know, how are things going? You know, is this something you want to do? You know, what are you learning from this? Is there any other services? We're able to still maintain that relationship. And so that is something we feel like is really strong within APDC. And again, it makes it much easier because we're all located in the same area, so we can just walk across the building to introduce people or introduce clients to other services if needed. And the main part is that these services is available to everyone and within departments itself. But I mean, again, it comes back to the fact that though we may have different services, there are things we can't supply, just like if someone's looking for housing or shelter, we would have to, you know, have our own, I would say, directory, or we would have our own resources to refer to a shelter service that we can trust and we know can actually take care of victims who are refugees or immigrants and understand their needs. And so to kind of dive into more of that, the integrated care system, these are some of the services we have at APDC. And like I had said before, behavioral health is one of our biggest service there. We have primary care, which is MCPN, the health project, which is essentially we have an individual, a staff member that helps our clients complete and fill out public assistance paperwork, because we all know how great government paperwork and applying for all those can be, and so, and especially in English too. And with him, he speaks Burmese, Karen, some Thai, and English. So again, he helps within the community that he can. And because we all work with such a bilingual and diverse staff, we are able to kind of utilize each other to help with that if needed.
Okay, so adult education, we do have ESL classes as well as citizenship classes, and we recently added job readiness classes, which is actually really exciting for us because clients will take classes on how to build resumes, kind of learning how American business organizations work, and they'll also get field experience running our front desk for our organization. We also have the Youth Leadership Academy, which focuses on high school level students from local high schools around where we are located off of Colfax and Alton, and that is the group that, like Newman mentioned earlier, we're doing the Indian dance flash mobs over the last couple of months, so they do things like that. They also have summer to the mountains. It's really about building community between the younger generation and making them feel like they have a safe space to kind of talk about the cultural challenges that they're facing or challenges that they're facing in general, just being teenagers. Colorado Language Connection is our one for-profit department. They provide all of our interpretation and translation services. Then we have the Legal Aid Clinic, which is run by our now new CEO, Harry, which can provide legal advice but not legal representation. And then our department, which is the Victim Assistance Department, which we do provide case management as well as direct services, trainings, and other things like that.
So then when it comes to the concept of accessibility, this can mean a lot, because I mean, a lot of organization feels that as long as they're open, they're accessible. But what does accessibility really mean?
So accessibility to the, as we're talking about the clients and the organization here, it really matters where we're located first, because the location, how does it matter? Like they can just walk in whenever they want to, and the location should be centralized for our clients in order to have them get an easy access to the location of where the services are provided. And based on that, the price also matters. Price, I would like to add insurance here, because the price has been another considerable accessibility to the clients, which really matters. If the client has to pay out of the pocket, and if the insurance is not affordable, we have to be accessed to those sort of things to make their health services get better in every aspect. And with the accommodation of the price and location becomes availability, which is another key point I must say, because on availability of, especially I would like to focus here on language, which is on the second last key point, as you can see. Availability on the let's say the department, or let's say the access to whatever you want to go through. It is another basic need where you can pour out all the things and where you can ask what's available, right?
Yeah. And so just going off of that, I think, there are a lot of things that we can't control necessarily. Like, let's say your organization is only open from 8 to 5. That limits your availability. And for me, my basic hours are 8 to 5. But if I have a client who works until 6 o'clock at night but really needs help and they really need to be taken to the police station so that they can file a report, if I really want to be accessible to them, then I'm going to make that happen for them. And a lot of that has to do with communications with your supervisors. I understand that, that might not be a realistic solution for some of you, but I feel like it's all about what we're really trying to do to provide for our clients. As far as location, you are located where you're located. Hopefully whoever built your organization took that into account, and if they didn't, we live in the time of cars. It's okay to travel to where your community is to become part of your community. And, sometimes that means that you have to travel to meet your clients on an everyday, which is fine. It's about being accessible to them and having you, sorry, I was about to say an oxymoron and I stopped myself. So really, I feel like with accessibility, it's about how you feel you could better reach your community. As with working in community-based, when working with community-based organizations, accessibility is really important because unlike with government agencies, we don't have pre-selected clients. Our clients, it's a choice for them to come to us, so we really have to value that and try and make ourselves as transparent to them as possible. And for our agency, what it means to be transparent just means that they know what our intentions are, and we can directly share with them what is happening and what we can possibly do going forward and what we can't do. And I feel like that really builds an honest relationship and an honesty about our accessibility to them. Because, if I have a client who comes in and they speak an extremely rare language, even though, we really try to be linguistically and culturally appropriate, we can't always do that. So if I have a client who speaks, an African language that we don't particularly have, in being transparent with them, I need to be like, hey, as much as I'd like to help you, I can't. And I think that's part of us ethically as far as accessibility.
And to kind of go into more about the transparency in the communication is that with the example that she had given, I can't help you, or maybe the fact of I won't be able to help you now, and it's going to take some time until I can find someone who can. So if you want to still stay in contact with me, or if you want me to follow up, I will. Letting them know that, you're willing to still look for someone who can help interpret, but it's going to take much longer than, within a week of calling back, just because it's such a rare dialect. So that we've had cases like that before, but letting them know that, okay, we're not just ignoring you, or we're not just blowing you off because you speak a different language. It's just the fact that it's hard to find someone else who may be able to help us interpret, our session. So letting them know that, and that communication is very important, that we feel needs to be communicated with anyone that comes to you as a service provider. And so for us as APDC, accessibility for our clients, and Pratima did go over some of this, is the fact that so our services for the victim assistant department is free of charge. And then we have sliding scales for other services like MCPN, the primary care, ESL, behavioral health, etc. And those and it's accessible in that sense where we know that because we work with such a lower income community, sliding scale makes sense. And a lot of the insurance that they do have is Medicaid and Medicare. And to know that because we do work with that community, like behavioral health takes Medicaid and Medicare, is to know that that's all they can afford, that we wouldn't be, having, it's not the privatized type of services. And as Pratima discussed, the location of our main office, it's within the community. It is within walking distance of a lot of our clients because where we're located, it is central to where the refugee resettlement organizations are located. So that would mean clients have to go in there to check in with the resettlement organization and then look and see if there are services around the community. We're one of those services. And the availability of interpretation of multiple languages. We are very fortunate to have a lot of our staff be bilingual, so we're able to quickly ask someone to help interpret if we have a walk-in client that we do not speak that language. But at the same time, we do work with CLC where we can get access to other interpreters if needed. It just, again, we have to communicate that with our client, that it does take time for us to arrange a meeting like that. It doesn't mean that we've forgotten about them, and that for us, we have individualized services for different age group within where we're located, from daycare services to elder wellness groups. So we're not just addressing one group per se. We want to address the community as a whole, which does include the babies and the elderly individuals, and a lot of that is thanks to behavioral health clinic to understand that all that whole wellness is very important within the refugee and immigrant communities.
And that stage also helps us identify different issues that really face our communities, including, it's not all about the cultural parts of it. There's also a huge generational gap. So us having services that are prioritized towards the elder group can really help with issues we see of elder isolation.
So quickly to go over our program, as Sarah discussed, we do case management, and we do direct services with our clients, and a lot of it is through referral as well as walk-in clients or referrals within our own agency. And we try to make sure to be, I would say, linguistically and culturally appropriate in services that we provide to our clients. But we're constantly learning, and we know that the needs of our clients are constantly changing. So we have to respect that and be mindful about the changes within the community itself. Some more information of what we do beyond what we've been chatting about, just quickly going through it with the victim's right. We have a brochure in different languages so that when we hand them out to clients that we know speak a certain language, we understand that they would prefer to read something in their language versus, something in English that they've seen multiple times but may not understand. But it's, again, to fully help ensure that our clients understand why we're there and what we do. But that kind of wraps up what we were trying to discuss. I hope it has been helpful to you all. This is our contact information. And again, the main thing is that we're constantly growing and learning a lot within ourselves and with other agencies too. And we know that times are changing, so we have to go with that. And we want to always reevaluate ourselves as a department to fit the needs of the community, because that's why we're there, is to help the community. But to what end is always the main question. So thank you for taking your time out to listen to us ramble for about an hour and a half. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us directly, or Josh, or email us, whatever way is best. Back to you, Josh.
Well, thank you all so much for providing this webinar, and thank you to everyone in attendance for giving your time out of your busy days to sit and hear this wonderful information. I would just like to let everybody know that on June 15th, we will be having a webinar from the National Latino Network. The title is Understanding Latino Realities, Promoting a Human Rights Framework to Ending Violence in the Latino Communities. I will be sending out the announcement for the registration for that webinar here shortly, so be on the lookout for that. And just thank you all for the amazing work that you do, and like the ladies from the Asia Pacific Development Center had said, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us about any of the questions for the content for this webinar or for any of our other webinars. And just thank you all yet again for attending today. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.